Hello, you alright? I just wanted to have a talk about a few things that have arisen on Twitter today. It's a remarkably dense place. It really is. Now, that press conference yesterday was pretty astonishing, wasn't it? Unprecedented, actually. I would really hope that this is going to cause or bring about some pretty rapid action, but also not just for Lucy Letby. The remarkably stubborn and begrudging wheels of justice in our country, it's got to change. The idea it's the best in the world is just abysmal. We clearly have a judicial system which is quite happy to leave innocent people locked up in jail for life because of extraordinarily strict and resentful refusal to admit that anything has gone wrong. Now, I'm sure there are many cases. There's not many that I have looked into that much, but one I would say is desperately in need of dealing with. It's that of Luke Mitchell, who has been in jail for 20 years. He was just turned 15 when he was charged with his girlfriend's murder. And it's clear he could not have committed this murder. And the way he was treated at the time as a 14, 15-year-old in the press was just abominable. It's very shocking looking back at the press coverage that he received in the early noughties as a child. Is really disgraceful. And his poor mother has sustained relentless vandalism campaigns and harassment. It's just terrible. There's loads of information about Luke Mitchell's story and that of poor Jodie Jones, so have a look. It's another huge injustice. So back to Lucy Letby. I don't believe that anybody who's been awake and aware of this case over the last 18 months particularly can still believe that she is guilty. I think it's just stubborn tribalism and that's it. But looking on Twitter, one thing kind of struck me, which is that those convinced of Lucy Letby's guilt, which I'm sure includes some people acting in good faith, but on Twitter anyway, the people who I'm talking about on Twitter, I don't think any of those are acting in good faith. I think they just enjoy a witch hunt. There's a couple I've spoken to who seem all right, but that is absolutely dwarfed by the mammoth number of them who are complicit in or guilty of horrible abuse. And Twitter is not a civilized place, but my God, these people really excel at being irrationally hateful and in excusing any behaviour whatsoever as long as it condemns Lucy Letby. I used to argue with trans activists a lot. They actually don't have a patch on the Letby lynch squad. I know I spoke about this the other week and some of the abuse I had got. I didn't format that very well at all, so the screenshots were repetitive and I missed out loads of stuff I should have put in. But whether this is even relevant, I guess, is a larger point. You know, there's not really much I can do by saying, look how horrible these people have been to me. That doesn't really address any of the relevant points, does it? Although it does point out some of their hypocrisy, and it certainly also points to their deep, visceral, emotional attachment to this case and the verdict. It's certainly not rational. Now, there are things that could change my mind about Lucy Letby. You know, especially like evidence linking her to one of the murders. That'd be a good start. As well as any evidence that those accusing her had actually tried to do anything to stop it. Although Twitter tells me that that's the same as accusing rape victims of being liars because they didn't cry enough. If the cases that could look quite convincing didn't fall apart on closer examination, which was then compounded by a series of really critical omissions, if other specialists and that was standing up to say, no, these convictions are solid. You know, if we had some neonatologists, for example, whether they wanted to be named or not, took a stand and contacted the press and said, no, Dowie Evans was right. That would be pretty convincing for me. There are literally no experts in insulin or neonatology or pathology. There's nothing. No one's come forward to say her convictions are solid or the medical evidence given at trial is convincing. Literally nobody. But I mean, it would be ridiculous to dismiss the fact that I have a vested interest, I guess, to some degree now. But my mind could be changed. I have actually been wrong before, and I can accept I could be wrong now. But yes, the bad faith, dishonest, abusive behaviour of these people is really a thing of wonder. Certainly the armchair psychology aspect of it is fascinating. I wish, it's fascinating. It really is. And you can see many of the regular Lucy Letby is guilty mob on Twitter particularly are getting extremely abusive now. And, the comments between themselves, rather than being, initially I was saying I didn't believe she was guilty. It was shortly after her convictions I came to that conclusion. But before that, I think, along with probably many people, I thought, well, to even pass the standard of being prosecuted, that's a pretty high bar. And so she's likely done it. And I didn't really want to hear that much more about it. But it was shortly after her conviction, several things made me look into it further. And one of the things that occurred to me along the way was the underlying misogyny. And I'm going to get onto that in a moment. Now, the first thing I wanted to deal with today is the relentless misrepresentation of Dr. Shoo yesterday. And the willful strawmanning of him by sharing a cropped screenshot from an article in the Times. And they love it because it could be inferred to mean that all of these people gathered together with the specific, dishonest and cynical aim to find anything that pointed away from Lucy Letby being guilty. So this has really gained some traction. I'm just going to show you a couple of screenshots, but there are many. So this one reads, "Wow, not Dr. Shoo on record saying they were instructed to find a different cause or person responsible for the deaths of Lucy Letby's victims. And Dr. Lee was tasked by Mark McDonald's Twitter handle and Elston, as in Peter Elston, to, quote, literally got to find a different person or thing that caused the death," end quote. And so he did. Oops, facepalm emoji. I don't think he was meant to say that. Haha. And not quite. This isn't going to look so good with the CCRC. And these are quote tweets of the above. Dr. Lee's starting point is rather interesting. Someone replies, "I don't think he was meant to say that bit out loud." God, I remember when that... Oh, did I say that out loud? Was that from an Eminem song? I remember when that was current and funny. Yeah. So there's all variations on this. And everybody giving it a little spin of, oops, stupid Dr. Lee messed up there, didn't he? Yeah. He shouldn't have said that bit out loud. Now, this brings us to the issue of, that's his starting point, really? Because it wasn't, was it? No, it wasn't at all. In fact, Dr. Lee's starting point was sharing his empathy and sincere condolences to the families of the injured and bereaved. So that's entirely dishonest for a start. But yeah, so this quote, it does look a bit bad. I will read it. "What they said to me was, you have literally got to find a different person or thing that caused the death," said Lee. "And I asked, so what's the chances? They said none, because it's going to be very hard to prove anything now. We've had our chance, and unless you come up with something that is totally different, she'll be in jail for the rest of her life." And I said, well, this is not fair, because the evidence that was used to convict her, in my opinion, wasn't quite right. Let's have a look at the full quote from that little bit, which was not his opening words. But of course, that's something that needs to be added in just to give it a little bit more gravitas. Yeah. But the full quote reads, "After Letby's appeal was rejected, Lee spoke to her legal team and asked, what happens now? He was told the case had run out of road and the only option was to apply to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The bar would be very high," the lawyers said. "What they said to me was that you have literally got to find a different person or thing that caused the death," said Lee. So basically someone's explained the bloody process to him. And as brilliant as Dr. Lee is, clearly English is not his first language. And I mean, I don't know what experience you have of doctors, but often their communication is not the most advanced thing about them. Or, I mean, certainly hasn't been in my experience. Yeah. So, I mean, this is just so ridiculous. These people are desperate as can be. They are grasping at any single thing that they can in an attempt to discredit people that they wish wouldn't speak. And this is, well, I mean, I think this is all they've got left, which is taking a while to sink in since they had the upper hand for so long, but you've got to be humbled by their downfall, I think. It's a very sad sight, but yeah. Also very funny. So it wasn't just this that's been taken out of context. Then there is some rather shrieky hysteria that Dr. Lee quoted from a study that he's only just published, because that's really bad. Dowie Evans. I mean, Dowie Evans hasn't published any papers whatsoever. Yeah. So he can't be accused of that. So, I mean, that's something we can all agree on. The fact that Dowie Evans cited Dr. Lee's paper 29 times during Lucy Letby's trial is irrelevant. And of course, don't forget, Dr. Lee is not an air embolus expert. In fact, his other papers were written with other people's work, so he don't know nothing, all right? And it's also very important that you're aware he's never seen it himself, okay? The fact that he did compile one of the few papers on air embolism in babies is irrelevant. The fact that Dowie Evans has never seen air embolism himself is irrelevant. The fact that his paper was used so heavily in Lucy Letby's trial and even cited before Evans came to the astonishing realisation that air embolus had, killed several of these babies. Dr. Jairam it's just one of those mad coincidences that before Evans discovered it just completely by his own brilliance, Ravi Jairam had also posted the paper and shared it with Dr. Gibbs, who dismissed it, to be perfectly fair. That's not important. That's not important at all. The important thing is that Ravi, yet again, invoked a physical bloody memory. He can remember the physical chill that went down his spine, not a metaphorical, no, physical chill. He's a sensitive man. And sitting at home with his iPad, desperately searching for answers as to how she was harming these babies. Then, of course, we have the secret knowledge that Dr. Lee has not seen photographs of the rashes that were described in court. The fact that, that's because there were no photographs and the rashes were never recorded in contemporaneous notes. It's another irrelevance, guys, all right? He heard the descriptions, and that wasn't bloody good enough. These descriptions, yes, they had changed over the years, but when he said, still, this is not specific to air embolus. In fact, it doesn't even bear resemblance to the rashes occasionally seen in relation to air embolism. That was ignorant, arrogant, and presumptuous of him. Thank you. Because he hadn't seen the medical notes. Now he has seen the medical notes. So what we're going to do, he's not an expert, all right? He is not an expert, and he is no more qualified than Dr. Evans. I really hope that you guys have got that. And as for his behaviour in doing this tasteless publicity stunt, Dr. Evans would never do anything like that. When Dr. Evans spoke to the Trial podcast by the Daily Mail, that relentlessly vindictive and partisan podcast, saying that he could never prove it, but he believes that the baby who was screaming for half an hour was screaming because he was having a heart attack and in excruciating pain. I mean, that's fine. Don't worry about upsetting the parents on that score, all right? The idea that a tiny baby screamed for half an hour, and this is highly, highly unusual in such a premature baby. And the fact this is all supposition because Dowie, as he admits, has absolutely no evidence. Screaming during a heart attack, I thought talking was difficult. That's just Lucy Letby being evil. Don't you point your finger at Dowie. Put your hand down. He's being honourable here, guys. Profoundly bloody decent, all right? And, so now, well, I'm sorry to keep picking on the same person, but it's really bloody hard not to. And when this person considers themselves an authority on the subject, yeah, you know, they beat the drum. That is danced to by the rest of the charming cohort that number the rabid lynch squad. But yeah, here we go. Pity none of them seem to have been given the full facts then, isn't it? Retweeting themselves. Baby A, Dr. Lee claims that baby A died from a clot and not air embolism due to inheriting antiphospholipid syndrome, which causes clots. Yeah, he did not say that. He was talking about the mother's antiphospholipid syndrome, which, you know, needed very careful management and which, I mean, bloody absolutely tragically was not properly attended to. And thus, this, via the placenta, has impacted the baby and caused a clot. Now she wonders, where is this clot? Because, right, so once she's misrepresented the genesis of this, and now she's wondering where the clot is because it was not found at post-mortem. Well, I mean, the thing is, neither was any foul play in any of the babies. You know, the post-mortems, natural causes for 6 of the 7 babies, and the one that didn't, there was nothing suspicious. So maybe this is a dodgy angle. It's certainly not one I'd be pushing. Jesus Christ. Because we had Professor Kinsey saying that this baby had not inherited the condition, gotcha number 1, yeah? Which is followed by the magnificent coup de grace that no images of a clot were discovered after death either. There are some erroneous suggestions that large amounts of air were found in the bodies, but I mean, that's not true, is it? No, there weren't. Air embolus might have been found by the pathologist who actually had this poor baby's body. So that's dismissed as well. They weren't looking for foul play, but normally air embolism isn't foul play, and obviously the doctors could have had a word, but they neglected that. And seems deliberately evasive of the fact that air accumulates in bodies within 25 minutes of death. And these x-rays were post-mortem, as well as being obviously 2-dimensional. Then there's a rather smug, Dr. Lee hasn't been informed of the full facts, unlike our Twitter commenter here, who is somehow better informed. The idea that Dr. Shoo Lee, one of the most eminent neonatologists in the world, along with his 13 fellow panel experts, are so damn stupid that they came into this being fooled, thinking that they'd seen the whole, all of the case notes and medical history, the trial transcripts and everything else that was available at the time, as well as the additional information that has since emerged. Somehow, Mark MacDonald has bloody he's bloody swizzled them, isn't he? Yeah, he's done a crime scene to courtroom here, going, honest, I got all the stuff. I've got all of the information, so trust me. And stupid old Dr. Lee, the damn idiot, who has come out of retirement and working on, he's got a farm in Canada. He's retired and works his farm, and he was very busy with the harvest when he first found out about all this. Who is not being paid and has, put in an enormous amount of work, who even paid for his own flight over to the UK. He's been rinsed here. And, it's unfortunate that the lynch mob have to set him straight about that, but so be it. They are, of course, only concerned with the truth, as well as obviously being deeply concerned about the parents, which is why they mention Lucy Letby having tortured the baby so much, and why they have been so vehement and loud in condemning that book by Judith Moritz and Jonathan Coffey, because they haven't been supportive of that at all. None of them have praised it or been saying that, it's a critical piece of work that rectifies the false narrative. Because, of course, several parents said they were appalled and disgusted that Moritz in particular, who had sat throughout the whole trial, was now monetising their pain and stories concerning their babies and their babies' deaths. Because if you're genuine in your concern for the parents, then you need to be consistent. And it would appear to me that Moritz and Coffey are the only ones making money out of this. Everyone else seems to be doing stuff for free. Even if they do say, as in the case of John Sweeney and Ed Abel-Smith, contribute to our funds if you can. Because that, sorry, is grifting. It is grifting. Unconscionable. Yeah, okay. So, obviously, nobody said the baby had inherited antiphospholipid syndrome. As for this being, these clots being easily visible in scans, let's have a little look at a commenter's responses. Yup, as you say, no original post-mortem findings to suggest foul play, and absolutely no clinical or post-mortem evidence of pulmonary air embolism. The whole air injection hypothesis promulgated by Dr. Evans has been comprehensively debunked by an international consensus expert panel today. Reply goes, you are ignoring the findings of a world-respected pathologist and also a radiologist, whilst you champion a paediatrician who has seen none of the evidence. I'm sure that makes sense to you. Well, okay, she's obviously referring to Dr. Marnarides as a world-respected pathologist. He does, as Stuart Gillam said, have a reputation as being a gun for hire, but this obvious state of affairs is an alternative fact as far as they're concerned. Dr. Shoo is one of the world's most eminent neonatologists. He's not a paediatrician like Dowie, but there we go. I'm getting into the silly points, aren't I? So here we go, the reply. What does not make sense to me is the utterly incoherent medical hypotheses put forward by a long-retired paediatrician were taken at face value. An internationally recognised panel of published expert neonatologists have offered infinitely more plausible reasoning. If you thought that sounded like a good point, well, just wait for this. And all the other experts you so conveniently forget about, and the 4 defence experts that presumably could not counter the prosecution case, all who had seen the evidence, unlike the ones today. I have no idea why. Well, I do. I tell a lie. Bloody terrible for lying, I am. Yeah, I know why they keep saying they haven't seen the evidence. Because, well, it is not driven by their pure hearts. Let's just put it like that. Of course, they have seen the evidence. I mean, my goodness, McDonald's has explained this. They've seen the transcripts, the medical records, the medical notes. That is why so many were shitting their beds recently. after McDonald explained this at the December press conference, because they believe that in this case, the defence should not have access to all of the evidence. I mean, it's just risible. Because it's private. That was their argument. It's private. Did they ask for mum and dad's permission? Blah, blah. Now, of course, it's bloody private. And this is heartbreaking. It genuinely is. Like with both press conferences, I've just thought, oh God, the parents of the babies involved being notified ahead of time, and it's just terrible. But what are you seriously suggesting that we should leave a woman to rot in prison for the rest of her life when these facts are, I mean, most of them are in the public domain? It's just another weak attempt to shut down conversation because they are so damn beloved of this persecution. It's sick. It's really genuinely sick. And this is what happens when you get some twattish charlatan rocking up at a copper's station feeling grandiose and brilliant because it only took him 10 minutes looking at a pathology report to diagnose murder. You want to take up the frankly horrifying invasion of these parents' grief and these babies' medical history. Take it up with them. Take it up with them. My God, grow up and look at yourselves. Christ above. And so our allied combatant replies, I didn't forget anyone, name of person. I'm simply saying that there are manifestly more obvious clinical explanations than a serial killer using multiple and outlandish techniques to kill, none of which were detected in life or at post-mortem. Dull, but far, far more likely to be true. And predictably, this is met with, yeah, but like guesswork doesn't cut it, does it? And the baby didn't inherit antiphospholipid syndrome and the blood clot would have been spotted at post-mortem. This goes on and on. This person is absolutely convinced it would be detected at post-mortem. And our hero works very hard at respectfully trying to explain that no, it would not. All blood clots after death, of course. And if you were to comprehensively rule out a blood clot in the brain, it would take millions of sample slides. But this didn't stop this commenter and many others who had been involved in this thread from repeating the same thing, that they said the baby inherited the mum's condition. And of course, if you were to point this out, you would get blocked immediately. The pretense that everything is being laughed off is so brilliantly done with GIFs. It's a fabulous showcasing how to bluff your way out of anything. It was a tour de force, I tell you. There were many people finding great joy in appearing to laugh at the press conference, but it seemed fairly hollow to me. This gentleman had grave concerns. He very did. Honestly, just driven by compassion for the parents. And I mean, if I were ever in those parents' position, I just cannot imagine how delighted I would be to have such a great friend and ally. It really must be a great comfort for them. Yeah. This is mainly one person. It's not all one person, but largely it is. I'm not going to have time to go into the endemic misogyny, but here's just a little look. He was not called out by anybody on that side. But anyway, the last amusing anecdote from today, which was over one of the experts on this panel yesterday. Jeff Chase, he's called, as you can see him here. He's one of these people that is an expert in a huge range of things, but hilariously was mistaken as some kind of quick fit mechanic. So he is a biomedical engineer. He works in neonatal medicine quite a bit, and he's extremely distinguished. Let me show you some slides. It's the whole the intersection between technology and medicine that he is. I mean, it's too complicated for me to even describe, yeah? my brain cannot function on these terms, but yeah, it's hard sciences, maths, technology, physiology. And he's worked all over the world. He's just brilliant. He's got to be kind of genius level intellect. And of course, we do know that this is particularly relevant when we're talking about how insulin is measured, particularly. I think Black Belt Barrister had an episode about this, talking about how biomedical engineers had spoken about how the level of insulin that would have been needed to produce the levels reported in these babies would have been 20 to 80 times higher than that which was estimated at trial, which is kind of important. He also talks about premature neonates chemistry being quite different to that of adults. And I mean, just look him up. I can't bloody explain it. But what was hilarious began with the response, as you just saw. What? He's a bloody mechanic. What's he done? It really cracks me up. They are so bloody pompous and pious. Just so clueless. It's just a thing to marvel. Yes, presumably, as we could see as well, he's just an irrelevant no mark right now. That's where I will end it today. All right, I'm gonna have to get on to the misogyny another time. Thank you, guys. Love you a lot. Bye bye.